Good afternoon. How are you? Fantastic. Today's conference has been great, hasn't it? I have been blown away by the whole thing. In fact, I'm leaving. You know, there's been three themes running through the conference today that are relevant to what I want to share with you in the time I've got. And they have to do with strategy. And the first theme is really about leadership, as you heard from Tim and Holly and Brendan and Noel, is that in these challenging times, there's an extraordinary need for leadership. The second thing is that you and I, we're all a bit like gamblers. We have no idea what's really around the corner in terms of the future. There's so much uncertainty. And the third thing that has been on display today in spades is the extraordinary capabilities of Rotarians and Rotaracts. And I'd just like you to put your hands together for our organising committee again, because they have been brilliant today. Just give us a round of applause. And Eshwar this morning, he's a marvel, isn't he? What he's achieved from such a young age, yeah? And he's extraordinary, but he's not extraordinary in the whole of Rotary. What we have in Eshwar is someone with extraordinary dedication who understands the value of creating options for others to thrive. I have an interest in strategy. In fact, what I find is everybody has an interest in strategy, don't you? I find this very interesting. If you go to a dinner party and someone asks you what you do, and you say you work as a strategist, they'll look at you with their eyes wide open like they just met a unicorn. But if you tell them you work as a strategist, they assume that you know all the answers, which I don't. Most of the time, my strategy involves taking lots of naps and hoping for the best. But once they find out you're a strategist, the conversation quickly shifts from what you were just saying to that business idea, that business option they've got for themselves. And the reason why that is, the boss they work for doesn't create options for them to thrive. And as a result, they feel trapped, desperate enough to try anything. In 1855, Henry David Thoreau wrote, "Most men are dealt unwinnable hands and lead lives of quiet desperation." 50 years later, Paul Harris established Rotary to give the quietly desperate a stronger hand and to participate in options around humanitarian service. 3 years later, Robert Baden-Powell created the Scouting movement to give largely unsupervised youths options around citizenship and community service. Both Harris and Baden-Powell, strong suits were around creating options for others to thrive, and those options have changed the world for the better. Eshwar's options for leadership were magnified when he joined Rotary High School, as we've seen and heard. My options for leadership came when I joined the Boy Scouts, but all I got was a badge for tying knots. You never know when you can need a bowline or a rolling hitch in a crisis. I want to tell you about a pivotal moment in my life when I was in the Boy Scouts. But before I do that, I want to share with you 3 strategic questions my strategic planning clients pay me to ask them, the secret sauce. And those 3 questions are, what's really going on here? The second question is, what are our options? And the third question is, what will we do? And these 3 questions make up my strategic mindset process, which we're going to hear about in a moment. The strategic mindset process helps you navigate the future. It helps you create options, and it helps you place smart bets. And in my experience, many leaders don't answer the first question well enough. They operate with a mindset that's focused on what's happened in the past, or they see the world as they are, they don't listen. And when we don't listen, we don't use our ears and our mouth in the same ratio, then we miss. Even more leaders, I think, miss the second question. They don't generate enough options for their people to thrive. And they gamble with a weak hand and a fixed mindset when they move forward. In the end, they just need an option to survive. And the third question I ask my clients is, what will we do? And when we have options, we can decide what to do amongst them. And we can also decide what not to do, which is the essence of strategy. Without options and trade-offs, there would be no need for strategy. Without options and trade-offs, then any good business idea would be quickly imitated. Without options and trade-offs, business success would be reduced to operational effectiveness and a race to the bottom. Options also show up in our lives. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you here ride a motorbike? Whoa! How many of you used to ride a motorbike? Wow, we got more than half the room. Hey! As a motorbike rider, I have two speeds. Zoom zoom, and let's not die today. My motorbike is like my therapist. It helps you forget about all my real problems, and it gives me a whole bunch of new ones. The only thing more exhilarating for me than riding my motorbike is that feeling I get when I take off my helmet and I notice my hair is still intact. A motorbike rider will slow down or even pull over as the options and space around them start to diminish. As a motorbike rider, as you all know, having space in front and behind, left and right is great. As the options for space diminish, the rider slows down. As a motorbike rider, a choice of one is no choice at all. Having options keeps you alive. And what about fashion? When it comes to fashion, who likes options? See all the ladies putting their hands up? A few of the men, that's good. When it comes to fashion, with my wife, it's all about shoes. My wife's shoe collection is so impressive, it could have its own wing in the Louvre. It's amazing. There are colours and there are styles for every occasion. With my wife, it's all about the options, isn't it, sweetheart? Yeah. When it comes to my collection, if she ever says to me, "You've got too many options in your wardrobe," I just point to a shoe collection. Honestly though, I think with my wife, if she lost her shoes, she'd probably have a near-death experience. Which reminds me of my time in the Boy Scouts. I was about 14. It was a really hot summer's day, a bit like the summer we've been having recently. And my scout friends and I were in camp, alone. And the reason why we're alone is our scout leaders have gone into town to the pub. I mean, into town for supplies. And they gave us very specific instructions to remain in camp and practice our knots. Well, 10 minutes later, 7 of us were trying to swim across a giant river nearby. And we swam and we swam and we swam. And eventually we got to the middle of the river. And the current in the middle of the river was like a hurricane. We just got swept out, further and further from the shore. And we struggled and struggled and finally got out of the river. We made it back to shore, we threw ourselves up on the sand and we were exhausted. And as we looked up and assessed what was going on, we noticed that our mate Bernard was still way out there. We were horrified. We knew we were going to get into trouble because he was in trouble. We were afraid that he was going to drown. It looked like that's what was going to happen. My friend Craig just started to cry. It was just mud on the ground. It was panic, total panic. We didn't know what to do. And you know you're in trouble when the Boy Scout motto goes from be prepared to be scared. And boy, were we scared. Nevertheless, our young minds got together and we asked ourselves the first question: what's really going on here? And we checked in with ourselves, and what we realised is we were too exhausted to swim. We couldn't go in. So we asked ourselves the question, what's going on for Bernard? Well, in actual fact, Bernard was way out, he had a cramp in his leg and he couldn't swim anymore. He was just trying to keep himself above water with his hands. We moved on to the second question. What are our options? Bernard was out there, looked like he was going to drown. We put our heads together again. One option was to alert the rescue service back in town, but that was miles away, and mobile phones weren't invented. We sent Michael on the long run into town. We thought again, another option. Perhaps if we went upstream we could find a boat and use it to take out and rescue Bernard. We sent Brett along the riverbank to look for a boat. Although we were exhausted, I was starting to recover. One option I thought was to jump in, swim out to Bernard and guide him back to safety. Another option was to stay put and avoid 2 drownings that day. We went through a range of options, which was a good thing to do. But eventually we ran out of time. Things were looking pretty bleak out there. Bernard was starting to disappear below the water and we couldn't see him anymore. And every now and then we thought we'd see him. I gambled. I opened my heart. Unselfishly opened my heart. Foolishly, I also opened my heart. And I plunged in. And I swam with all my remaining might. Even though I was tired, I swam and I swam. My legs, my shoulders, my feet, my arms, and my hands. My hands working together with my body to propel me out to where I thought Bernard was. And when we used them together, our head, our heart, and our hands, we can create powerful options for people in the world. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. So finally, I got out to Bernard. And initially, I kept my distance. I asked myself the first question, what's really going on here? I was exhausted. I couldn't do much to catch my breath. I looked at Bernard, he looked really happy to see me. He had a weird and visceral look of desperation in his eyes. In my mind, I knew that desperate drowning people can lock onto their rescuer and drown both of them. I considered my options. Eventually, I left Bernard with 2 options. Bernard's options were relax and be rescued. My options were to rescue Bernard or let him perish. Business leaders who don't create options for themselves and their people perish. Does anybody here remember Kodak, Encyclopedia Britannica, Blockbuster? Who here is young enough to remember the days when you got a VHS, you actually had to rewind the thing before you took it back to the rental store? Who remembers that? Wow, yeah, nice young audience. About my vintage, that's great. And I love the days of Kodak when you had to wait a whole week to see how badly your holiday snaps turned out. And Encyclopedia Britannica was the only way to accidentally learn about the mating habits of sloths. It was interesting, these 3 companies sank to the bottom and perished. On the other hand, other companies floated to the surface and flew into their future. Marvel Comics, instead of getting shelved, created options for themselves around movie franchises and have done very, very well for themselves. And then we have Apple. In 1995, was in Chapter 11, going bankrupt. They created themselves options for devices rather than computers. iTunes, iPods, iTouches, iPhones, iWatches, to be the most successful company on the planet by creating new options. And then there was Netflix, which used to have a DVD in the post service. And as Holly was sharing before, there was little Annie guy went to the little dispensary and got the DVD and upscaled it for $265. So there were enough Annies running around the world that were bootlegging off Netflix. It wasn't very good for their business model. So they decided to put movies on the internet and stream that way. And now Netflix is one of the biggest entertainment companies in the world. And one of my favourite companies, a company I worked with many years ago, they've been around a long time, almost as long as Rotary, and that's IBM. IBM has had a checkered history, and the reason why they've had a checkered history is they never thought long enough about the future a lot of the time. In fact, in 1943, some of you may remember, Thomas Watson, the CEO, his idea of the future was something like this. There's a world market, I think, for maybe 5 computers, is what he said. Today there are more computers on the planet than people. Nevertheless, although they nearly perished a number of times, IBM has created options for themselves. They've gambled on cloud services, and they've also gambled on Watson AI. Although I suspect, as Holly's suggesting, that ChatGPT 6, 7 and 8 will probably cut their lunch. Speaking of perishing, is anybody here curious? Why are you curious? You want to know, sorry? The end? Oh, you want to know the end? Yeah, that comes up. Is anybody curious about what's in the box? Yeah? Let's have a look. It's something that's perished. Can anybody tell me what this is? What's that? Burner. They're good, aren't they? We'll meet him later. Now this is actually a lady, this one. Anybody recognise it? Anybody think it's a skull? Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him well, Horatio, a fellow of infinite jest and most excellent fancy. Alas, my dear friends, this is not the skull of a man. This is the skull of a different species that's not a Homo sapien. Does anybody recognise it? Show of hands. We've got a mic runner here who can run the mic to you if you think you know the answer. Just down here, there's a gentleman in purple. Just there. Looks a bit like a human skull, but it's not.
Is it a replica of the skull of Eve?
No.
Not the biblical Eve, but the anthropological Eve, the fossil remnant of the mother of us all.
And which species is that, sir?
Homo pithecanthropus.
A little bit more recent than that. Keep going. No, you're good. You're on the right track.
Erectus.
One more.
Floriensis.
One more again. There's a tree that's split between a Homo erectus and a Homo erectus split into 2 lines.
Homo habilis.
Starts with the letter N.
Neanderthal.
Correct. Well done, sir. This is Wilma. And she's 25,000 years old. She's pretty old, isn't she? She perished. I need a volunteer to come up and help me with Wilma. Would you be willing to come up, sir, and give me a hand with Wilma? Put your hands together for her. Little backstory, when I first met my wife, Joanna, who's here with me, and I told her I travelled the world with Wilma, giving strategy talks, she was a little confused at first, and even a bit jealous. But once our relationship's been much better since she met Wilma. She loves the fact that Wilma's jaw is broken, and that Wilma doesn't have any lips. What's your name? Tim. Tim? Put your hands together for Tim. So if you can just face the wall there. And everybody just have a close look at the shape of Tim's skull, and then also have a look at the shape of Wilma's skull. What do you notice about the shapes of the skull? If you put your hand up, we'll bring a mic runner around to you and you can share what you observe. What do you notice about the shapes of the skulls? Put your hand up. There's one behind you there. Yes. One doesn't have hair, I know, yeah. Mike's not working? We're going to find a mic that works. But have a look at the front of the skull and the back of the skull and see if you notice the difference between Tim's skull and the Neanderthal skull. You got, who's got the bigger forehead? Tim, that's right. That means you're very clever. Who's got the bigger rear brain? Neanderthal, correct. Well done. Because the skulls are different shapes, the brains inside them are quite different too. And there's some clues around strategy with that. Would you please put your hands together for Tim? We're going to give you a copy of the strategy book for coming up and being a volunteer. There you go. So Neanderthals had different shaped skulls. And that has implications for strategy and survival. So what I want you all to do now is to stand up, please. And we're going to learn the 6 steps of the strategic mindset process. The first 2 steps of the strategic mindset process are to sense and see. I'm going to get you to do the actions. Are you ready? Sense and see. Well done. And these 2 actions help us answer the question, what's really going on here? And what we know, because Neanderthals had a very large rear brain, they have more room in the rear of their skull for their parietal and occipital lobes. So scientists tell us they're very sensitive to changes in their environment, and they had night vision, which means they could see in the dark and avoid being eaten by saber-toothed tigers and all those things that come in at night. The next 2 steps of the strategic mindset process are to connect and plan. Should we do them together? Connect and plan. Yep. And they relate to the second question. What are our options? When we connect with others, we can plan future options. Because Homo sapiens, like Tim, have a big frontal cortex, means that we're really good at imagining possibilities, connecting ideas, and creating options. What about Wilma's forehead? Was it big or small? Small. She wasn't very good at connecting ideas or coming up with options. That was a disadvantage. And the last 2 steps of the strategic mindset process are focus and move. So let's try them together. Focus and move. Well done. And when it comes to getting things done, it's really important we access our midbrain, where we house our cerebellum and our basal ganglia, which are responsible for our motivation and our agility. So we are far more motivated and agile than Neanderthals. So quickly, let's do the actions from the top. Can you remember them? Sense, see, connect, plan, focus, move. Give yourselves a round of applause and take a seat. So, in a battle for supremacy between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens, who do you think won? Anybody? Who said Homo sapiens? You said, what's your name? Frank, head over to the book table, catch Joanna, she'll give you a copy of the strategy book. Well done, top of the class. I gave Bernard 2 options. Relax and be rescued, or perish. I had 2 options, rescue Bernard or let him go. Fortunately for Bernard, chose the first option. Leaders who create good options for their people answer these 3 questions. They ask the question, what's really going on? They create options for people to thrive, and they work out what to do. In other words, they use the 6 steps of the strategic mindset process. When I got to Bernard, he was struggling, and he cooperated. 10 minutes later, I had him out of the room. We stopped, we caught our breath. Another 20 minutes later, we made it to shore. That day, as Boy Scouts, we had a practical example of what it meant to create options for others to survive and thrive. That day, our leaders, who left us with very few options, learned painful lessons as well. I also learned that when I combine my head, my heart, my hands together, I have a powerful way of actioning options. So in summary, 3 things. I encourage you to answer the first question, what is really going on here? Use your ears and listen. Secondly, be like Paul Harris. Connect with others and create options. And the third thing is remember the strategic mindset process. Sense and see, connect, plan, focus and move, and repeat the process so that you have a strategic conversation that goes on beyond an annual event or a fixed plan. Yeah. I have time for a couple of questions if anybody's got any questions. Otherwise I'll wind up. Does anybody have questions about strategy or options? Show of hands, anybody? Questions? You must ask a question. First speaker today has asked us for any questions. Anybody got any questions? Yes, can we get the mic down here, please? Yes, sir. What's really going on in the casino tonight? And what will our options be? Can we place some good bets? Okay. Great question, sir. Any other questions? Just down here. Yep. Another mic that works.
Being a younger Rotarian, and I know this is discussed throughout Rotary, and the aging demographics of wonderful Rotarians here. What sort of strategy and what sort of processes can our individual and local clubs go through to best address the problems of our membership and how we can increase our numbers and increase the engagement of our clubs in our local communities using your process?
Yeah, that's a great question. The question is how do we survive beyond 100 years in terms of the evolution of this organisation? And it's a great question. It's a question that's on Rotarians' minds and has been for some time. And what I've noticed about you guys and you ladies is that you have so many options already based on age groups. You offer things for people that are 8 years old, 18 years old and 80 years old. So you already have lots of options for participation. What I would encourage you to do is to take that first question and take your analysis a little bit further and say what's really going on here, and then within those optional programs, what other options? So as Holly was sharing, can we tap into the mindset of the constituent we're looking to serve, and can we creatively create those options using our frontal cortexes to share ideas? Does that make sense? Yeah. Great, thank you for your question. All right, I'm just about out of time, so I appreciate you listening, and I've really enjoyed being part of the conference. If you'd like to connect with me afterwards, I'll just be down here if you've got any other questions. If you'd like to pick up a copy of the strategy book, there are discounted prices for you. I hope that what I've shared has been of some use to you. What I could not imagine, all those years ago when I was a Boy Scout, was that many years later, I would be like you. At a conference, I was at a big conference. Someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned around, and there was a man standing in front of me. I said, what's going on here? Why is this man smiling at me? And then I recognised who it was. Who was it? Bernard, that's right! And I looked again. And you know what? He didn't have a weird and visceral look of desperation in his eyes. His heart was wide open. So I took a step towards him and he put his arms out. He wrapped his arms around me and he gave me a grateful hug. And he gave me a heartfelt hug. Not unlike the hug I saw between Tim and Noel this morning. A grateful, heartfelt hug. An appreciative hug. And in that moment when I was hugging Bernard, I realised that as leaders, with the shifting tides and currents of life, that we need to create options for others to survive and thrive. Thank you very much.